Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on my European night crawlers that live in these yellow buckets. I've got buckets number 3, 4, and over there, bucket number 5, all lined up to get fed. And after 12 days, with only a banana peel, which is what they got last time, I would have to assume that they're probably ready for feeding. So those banana peels were feeding number 11, and today feeding number 12 is going to consist of just a variety of different stuff out of my freezer. Something we're going to encounter in these systems as we go through is a number of little bits of corn cob, and the thing that sets these corn cobs apart is that I attempted to soak them in water for some time before we gave them to the worms, thinking that maybe corn cobs that have been soaked would somehow soften up and be easier for the worms to eat. And I've even got sort of a follow-up to that experiment in the works. I not only soaked some other corn cobs, but then I went ahead and I also placed them into the freezer. And they've been in the freezer for some time, and there was even a period where I had let them thaw out, and then I soaked them a second time, and then they went back in the freezer after being soaked a second time. So soaked and frozen, soaked and refrozen. So I don't know if that would help improve the pace at which those corn cobs get broken down, but at some point, maybe after this corn cob experiment concludes, maybe we can start another corn cob composting test with those other corn cobs that were similarly prepped for worm bin use, but even more so with that additional step of freezing, not just soaking. So, all right, what's this? Oh, this is a banana stem, which I guess is part of the leftovers from the last feeding. Besides the banana peels going in and some bedding going in with the banana peels down in the feeding zone, we also laid out a whole bunch of shredded paper cardboard out on the top surface, which at this point I figured we would just blend in along the way as we go. I think it was here in bucket number 1 where one of the corn cobs I accidentally applied a little bit too much force onto, or whatever. You get the idea. I leaned on it and I cracked it. So there is one corn cob in here. Here's a piece of that one corn cob that I broke by accident. So this is not indicative of what type of progress a soaked corn cob would make in a worm bin on its own without any help. That one definitely got some help with me crushing it. And I assume that maybe what we're bumping in here is another chunk of it, but you know, it just broke into 2 pieces. So whether we're even going to be able to identify that next time we bump into it in the future is, I guess, in question at this point, just based on how puny it is. And you know, I applied the shredded paper and cardboard that we threw in here last time with a good bit of moisture. I dampened it all since the stuff went in dry, but today I plan on using my prepared bedding, which is already pre-dampened. Not to mention the fact that, you know, if you compare banana peels, which I think don't bring with them much juiciness, to the stuff I'm giving them today, which is just a big mix of all different types of cut vegetables and fruits, stuff like cucumber and who knows what else, I am kind of assuming that the foods that we're giving them are bringing with themselves a little bit of additional moisture. Definitely more than whatever the banana peels brought with themselves. So I didn't really plan on adding water with today's feeding. Today I figured between the juicier type food that they're getting, in addition to the pre-moistened prepared bedding of mine, we should be okay with moisture down in these systems. So I did take a little extra time to sort of just till up the entire contents of the system. I was really interested in seeing that shredded paper cardboard mix blended in throughout the system. And we'll do the same in the other buckets as well when we get to them. Blending in all that nice seasoned bedding that they got last time. But now I think we're set to proceed with giving them today's feeding. Now, besides the assortment of different veggies and stuff, I've also got these paper towels that are extremely soiled. So I wanted to include one of these with each portion of food. So like this one, I believe, was in a bag with a little head of red cabbage, and the cabbage started to go bad, so it has now been placed into my freezer for some future worm bin feeding. But the paper I thought would serve as good foundational bedding to plop in beneath the foods. So now this is pretty much the extent of what I bought down for them in this frozen together chunk. So I thought it would be nice if I can portion out 1/3 of it. And I'm starting to wonder if I might have gone overboard there a little bit and given these guys more than that fair share, but it should be close enough, I think. And this is the part that, I don't know, do I really want to... I always feel bad having a big pile of frozen stuff and then taking things that have worms hanging out on them and placing the worms right in the middle of all that frozen stuff. I don't know. I'm pretty sure the worms can handle it, so I shouldn't worry too much about it. But I wanted to get these leftover chunks of corn cob back down into the middle. There's that banana peel, or banana stem, and then even this little chunk of the corn cob that broke apart in my hands last time. I mean, it was 2 feedings ago when I cracked it, and clearly could tell that I had broken it, but it was as soon as I touched it during the last feeding that it actually fell apart into a couple individual pieces. So now I'm just bringing up material from down low so that we can kind of level off here and make sure that the feeding we gave them last time, or the feeding that we just gave them, is pretty thoroughly covered up. And I kind of like that idea of applying bedding material out to the top surface. So I think we'll do the same again here today. We'll just take a little small handful just so that there's some out on top. I don't want to go all the way out to the edges because our plastic coverings don't go all the way out to the edges. I just want that stuff to be under the cover of plastic so that it has a pretty good chance of remaining nice and damp so that the worms feel comfortable venturing into it. So that was the feeding of bucket number 3. Let's bring bucket number 4 in here next. So let's see if I can do this gracefully. Oh, okay. No problem, no problem. Just a little little noise. Let's get bucket number 3 out of our way. So here in bucket number 4, and I guess in bucket number 5 too, I'll now be in a somewhat different mindset, sort of knowing what to expect, or thinking that I know what to expect, just because of the fact that these systems have been getting maintained in a fairly consistent fashion. So in a way, I feel like we can just sort of barrel ahead without being so inquisitive and actually just get the feeding taken care of, but at the same time also try to see if we can track down some of the experimental corn cob bits. Sometimes I even wonder if this stuff is getting the attention it deserves because it's covered in castings, but you can see there's worms on it, so I don't think there's reason for concern. I'm sure that down in the center of the thing too, the middle of it, the core has probably been nibbled out already down the middle, probably creating a little spot for the worms to be able to crawl down into. So now here's a third one. And I think we had 4 in each bucket. So here we go. Here's the 4th one. So I think we've just managed to locate all the corn cob bits. And I don't remember, did we till up that other edge? I'm pretty sure I got this side over here where I'm stacking stuff up now tilled up nicely. Let's just see if we can give this edge over here a little bit of a agitation too. Remember, I want to get all this shredded paper and cardboard mix that was laid out onto the top surface blended in nicely throughout. So that's my main reason for just perhaps going a little bit above and beyond what I would normally do in terms of agitating the material in my systems, although I do like to stir stuff around, not only to see what's going on in there, but also aerate the material. So I think we're set to chip off another portion of what's in this collection here. Alrighty, that should be about right, I believe. I think we've saved enough to make it a fair distribution. Yeah, that'll work. I guess similar to last time, they're getting more banana peel, but in this case there's also potato peel. I see cucumber. I think I see carrot. There's probably other things in here too, so this is just one of those assortments that I get from my mom, and I never exactly know what to expect. And I don't even go picking through it too much. A lot of times it's just during the feeding that I actually check out what was given and what kind of condition it's in. Usually I just bring the stuff home, throw it in the freezer, and then the next time it's checked in on is when it's actually been taken out of the refrigerator to be fed to the worms. So I think we're making good progress here. Let's cover up, and then we could proceed to feeding the last of our buckets. Bucket number 5. All right, come on over here, bucket number 5. There we go. So at this point, like I said, we're just following the cookie cutter approach for the most part. Naturally, if we encounter something that's kind of out of the ordinary and unexpected, especially if it's something that's an undesirable sort of a situation, we're definitely going to slow down and try to size up where we're at and possibly even try to determine why the situation is the way it is and why it differs from the other systems. But that's usually the exception, not the rule. Usually when you're running multiple systems like these, launched on the same day with a similar number of worms and all managed very similarly, it's fair to expect that the outcome is going to be pretty similar too. So let me just not forget to do the spinning of the stuff. I think it might make sense to do the blending of the shredded materials down into the bed before trying to locate and set aside the corn cob bits. And whether or not we even need to inspect them much, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be very different from what we saw in buckets number 3 and 4. The last time I ran these yellow buckets, I was using the buckets that are labeled as buckets number 1 and 2. And there I definitely did something significantly different in the two systems, where we actually ran one of the buckets. Bucket number 2 was set up to be a set it and forget it environment, where I believe over the course of 7 weeks, 49 days I think it was, those systems were simply peeked in on during each check-in, but then nothing more, never touched. And then we had a little bit of an opportunity to compare and contrast when you have two very similarly built systems that at some point deviate drastically. And in that case, it was just by being set up to be ignored. I mean, we didn't ignore them just on a whim. We sort of prepared for it by loading up the bucket number 2 with a whole lot of bedding all the way up to the rim pretty much. And then over those 7 weeks, we observed the material gradually settling and getting consumed and the level dropping. And then I guess eventually we decided it was time to get them back on the feeding schedule and start giving them the types of foods that the other system was getting too, rather than getting pretty much nothing. And I guess just to try to keep things even in terms of the bedding that was being applied each time and the system that was being fed, I guess the attempt was to eventually end up applying just as much bedding to the bin that was being checked in on regularly as what had been put into the second bucket, the one that was left untouched. Over time, I believe we did eventually apply an equal quantity of bedding into both systems. Perhaps the only key difference was the foods that were getting applied regularly to the system that did get regular feedings over that time. So, all right, we're pretty much at the finish line here. I guess all that remains is getting our top covers back on, which I'll keep you around for, but what follows after that is a whole bunch of boring stuff, like cleaning things up and putting stuff away. But as usual, I'm not going to keep you around for that because that's boring. But you know what? Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.